Hi all, welcome to this retrospective video looking at population pyramids. Now we've already covered some of this stuff in class, but this is just a wee video to go back over some of the main points and to give you guys a chance to maybe flesh out some of your notes a wee bit on population pyramids. Now we've all seen this diagram that is based off the demographic transition model, and it has our 5 main population pyramids on it. Now the population pyramids here, an obvious point to begin with, they're obviously idealised, and you will find population pyramids that look different to this, but you still need to look for a shape that is close to one of these shapes, and then you use it to interpret some information about the country that the population pyramid is referring to. So, broadly speaking, we can split the pyramids up a little bit into some kind of neater groups for us. So, these pyramids here, we have got largely younger populations. Then if we these two here, we've got kind of largely older populations. And then the ones here, wrapped up with this green box, are populations that are either rising or, kind of when you get to stage 4, we're talking about rising and starting to level off. Whereas when we get into stage 5, it's a little bit different, and that is the first stage where we actually start to see total population numbers go into a decline. Now, the big thing to look at here, there's a lot of information on this slide, and you've already started to put some of this information into your notes, but this is just to help further enhance that, is the big thing we look at is the impact that a young or an old population has on the country that it's host to. So if we look at a young population first, one, we're going to have a very high dependency ratio. We've got a lot of children who are going to need support from the working age population, and they're going to need access to things like school, paediatric care, all the rest of it. And that puts a strain on a country's economy having to provide that support. If it's not a particularly wealthy country to begin with, which tends to be the case in countries with fairly young population structures, it's difficult to meet those needs. As these young people start to grow and they start to get older, now the good news, they will eventually become the working age population, which could lead to a huge amount of economic growth in the future. But the bad news, they're going to want access to things. They're going to want access, as we say, going beyond schools and healthcare, to housing, to jobs, potentially to benefits. All of these things that a country has to be able to provide its population, but it might not be able to because economically it might not be stable enough to do so. When we look at an old population, again, we've still got this high dependency ratio. We're just looking at it at the other end of the pyramid. We've got a large number of people who have left the workforce and who need to be cared for by the remainder of the population. Now, in this case, the needs are a little different. We're looking at, for instance, paying for pensions, and we're looking at geriatric care in this case. Older people are very, very intensive users of a healthcare system. Now, on the pensions point, a little bit that's interesting, and it's a statistic that's from the textbook, but it's a good one that I wasn't quite aware of before I'd seen it there. 2014, 60% of the population was working and paying into the tax pot, and you had 19% of the population drawing from that tax pot in pensions. The projections for 2030 is that we're going to lose 4% of the population, will not be in the working population anymore, so that number drops to 56%, but we're going to gain nearly 10% in the drawing out onto the pensionable side of things. So you're going to have 56% of the population paying for pensions that 27% are going to be drawing from. Now that, it creates a lot of problems. We look at that and immediately we think, right, how is that going to be financed? And it's looking at things like, are we going to need to increase the age of retirement? Are we going to need to increase tax contributions to help pay for these bills? The big issue here, and it all boils down to a lack of workers, a lack of a working age population, and how do you solve that? Now there's 2 big solutions to how you solve an ageing population. One is you try and get migrants to come into the country. If you can encourage inward migration of a working age population, you can offset the issues that you're having. Another is you can try and encourage a boost in birth rate, in that if you then have an influx of children, they will become working age and they will then be able to contribute to the economy. For a closing kind of point in the video, in terms of the young population, the solutions with your young population is basically trying to have your country develop as quickly as possible. And it sounds very trite and it doesn't sound like a particular solution, but you want to try and get as many people in your country as economically active as possible and producing things that are going to generate money. That money can then be used to introduce education programs, increase the aspirations of women, increase people's general kind of career prospects, so that they'll have fewer children and they'll start to have those children later in life, which will bring the birth rate under control. The other side of it with the young population structure is your healthcare system probably isn't great. So people will be having lots of children as a kind of replacement mechanism. So if you improve the healthcare system, you can offset, or well, you can reduce your infant mortality rate, and as such people will start to have fewer children, which overall removes some of the strain from the system. Now, I've very deliberately kind of rushed through this, guys. It's going to be a short video, just because it is a retrospective. We have discussed this in class. Remember, if you've got any questions, bring them up in class and we can discuss them. Next video is going to be looking at one of our first case studies, when we're looking at migration and population geography. And until then, I will see you guys later.